Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all of you. Thanks for joining another episode of the NCMC webinar series. Today we're having our second one of the year. Today we're also breaking a little bit with our pattern. Normally we have book authors. Today we actually have Erik Weytjens from INSEAD alumnus himself, who was the winner of the 2025 edition of the INSEAD NCMC Negotiator Award. And so we're fascinated what we learned from him, from his case, from his candidacy, and therefore we thought it would be a great exception for our series for him to show and share with us some of the things that he learned, much more from that practitioner lenses that we don't bring as much, but I think will be very enriching for all of us to add on to all the others that we've watched so far in this webinar series. So today we're going to have the title being Negotiating for Impact, Human Dynamics from the Front Lines, and you will see very clearly what does he mean by front lines. He's not afraid of being there where the fire actually burns. And so remember, this is here an event sponsored and coordinated by the NCMC. Our mission is to create, share, teach, and expand win-win sustainable negotiation knowledge around the world, hopefully as a force for good, a little bit everyone a negotiation at a time. Let's remember our house rules for those of you who've been before, and for those of you who don't, please note that the audience is muted and the video will be off at all times for you. The chat box is only for host posting. We will be posting at the end some links and others for your benefit if you want more resources, including the NCMC website. The Q&A tab is for you to ask your questions. Remember, we usually don't have time to answer all questions, so the sooner you already feel like you have something to ask, please put it on the chat, on the Q&A, sorry. And feel also free to upvote to make sure that the questions you prefer or would really like to see answered come up front, because those are the questions that I will select when asking Erik at the end of the webinar. The recording will be available at a later date. We usually announce it on LinkedIn, or if you visit the NCMC website frequently, you'll be able to see it there. I think that's it for now. Today, we're going to have about a half hour with Erik, then about 20 minutes in the Q&A. And at the end, some 10 minutes, give or take, a little less than that probably, where we'll also talk a little bit about the soft launch of the 2026 edition of the Negotiator Award for the NCMC and INSEAD. So jumping into what really matters then, we're going to have here Negotiating for Impact, Human Dynamics from the Front Lines with my recent friend and colleague, alumni, Erik Weytjens. And I really try to get his last name right. I'm sure I didn't nail it, but I try to get it at least as close as I could. Without further ado, Erik, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much, dear Horacio. Thank you for inviting me here today in this INSEAD Lifelong Learning Series, after having given me the INSEAD Negotiator Award last year. More than that, thank you for being the idealist who you are, for having created with your fellow professors the INSEAD Negotiation and Conflict Management Collaborative, promoting value-creating negotiations as a better alternative than win-lose strategies. When we were sitting together last year in Abu Dhabi, planning for today's session, I couldn't imagine that there would be another big war in the world today, a war killing soldiers and citizens, old and young. I'm not going to talk about that. This is clearly not my zone of expertise, but I'm concerned as a citizen. So what can we do? Citizens, who are we? And then I strongly believe in the power of grassroots. Most of us here in the call are INSEAD alumni, alumni of the school which stands for Business as a Force for Good. If all of us, day after day, promote value-creating negotiations in everything we do, we have the power to change the world. So I'm very grateful that you invited me to share my personal insights into negotiation dynamics. Let's dive into it. Now I just need to start sharing. Share my screen. Yes, so a quick...
still black on my screen, and that's up. Good.
It's working now, yes?
Yeah.
So a quick intro of about who I am. So I have now more or less 30 years of professional experience, half of it in P&L roles, managing people, managing the P&L of companies or large departments. The main ones are bpost and Sabina. The other half of my career has been in consulting or is in consulting. I've been working for McKinsey, and now since the last 15 years, I'm management consultant at Efeso. The third element in who I am, I think, is a very strong societal engagement, board companions. This is, I will get into that later on in this webinar. And then last but not least, I'm a would-be artist. I like to paint, and this is clearly an important element of my personality as well. So, what's my, let me know. So what's my take for today? What my take for today? I propose you today to dive into the practice of negotiation, not the theory, and into the human dynamics. This is about you. You as a negotiator, you enter into a negotiation. What do you do? As a matter of fact, negotiation is everywhere in our lives. We all get better as we grow older, and with humbleness. So all of us have their good practices, but with humbleness, I will share some of my own insights acquired over the years. If you attend this session today, I'm sure that you're already a strong believer in value-creating negotiation. Yet how do you practically do it? How can you convey the message to others that they can negotiate with you for more value, that they can trust you? How do you build this context where value-creating negotiation can take place? And I will share two of my own learnings, two categories. One is, how can you signal directly or indirectly your good intentions through your actions? And the other one is, how can you keep up the spirits? Negotiations don't always go right or don't always go as well as you hope. How can you not get discouraged, but keep up the spirits for yourself? How to keep on believing? And the way I'll do it in this webinar is through a few first-hand stories. I will share you a context, what I did, often not alone, but with other people together, of course, and I will draw altogether 10 practical insights from this practice. So I'm going to focus it on you as a negotiator. From theory to practice, you step into the negotiations. So maybe a quick intro to the three cases. So in 1992, I got out of INSEAD with the MBA, and then my career has been really dual in between consulting and P&L, as I said. And so there has been negotiation experience all over, right? In the P&L, it was about, okay, social negotiations, about acquisitions, about partnerships, about stakeholder management, M&A, joint ventures, all of that. In the consulting, pretty much the same, but then more in a supporting role to my clients. And so the cases I will discuss today, the first one is the Sabina case, which was bilateral inside the company, social negotiations between management and the workers, value creation inside the company. Second case I will cover is a more ecosystem-wide case in the port of Antwerp-Bruges, multi-party negotiation, intercompany value creation. And the third one is then about our societal engagement. This is the board companions. It's about bridging the gap in between the needs of the social profit sector and what business can bring. And that's more about catalytic value creation. So throughout my career, I think the complexity has increased over the years, the size of the negotiations, and I will try to bring that across through these three cases. So I think with that, we are ready to start. First case, Sabina Catering. So this case concerns my first job after INSEAD, as I was the head of the production of Sabina Catering. I was then 20 years old and in charge of 700 workers. On the slide, you see what it is all about. Back in those days, catering was very high on the branding of airlines, and so we made 30,000 meals a day of high quality with lots of people cooking, putting things on trays, putting trays on the planes, bringing them back. It's an industrial operation. So the catering plant had been the most unionized division in the airline, with at least one strike or work interruption per week. when I started, but we had managed to change that rapidly through innovative and authentic leadership. I'm not going to take you through the whole story. It's a long story and it has been documented in a business school case study. I will share just one anecdote, and it's still the most beautiful one of my career. Imagine this. Sabina has laid off 1,000 people and the whole company went on strike, except for our catering operation, because we had already established a better social climate. So now we are in the second day of the strike. This is the photo from my window, from my office. Everywhere you could see pickets, strike pickets, flames and smoke from burning tires, protest marches. Yet the catering was open and running. On the morning of that second day, there was like an assault of 200 strikers to the catering. We saw them running to our building. We feared that they would come and sabotage the plant, and we had just managed to close the gate before they arrived. That's more or less the impression there was. So now 200 strikers are pushing the gate and trying to force their way in. So I saw this. I ran outside without thinking, just run to the gate. And when I ran outside, people were already pushing all together. Oh, they wanted to bring that gate down. So I run to the gatehouse, jumped on the guard's house, and started to yell at them and ask them to stop, in the sake of the future of the company, our common company, which we were trying to save in the interest of all, of course. So after a while, they calm down, and the union leader steps forward. He tells me they don't want to sabotage the operations, but they want to come for drinking a coffee in our canteen. So I couldn't believe my ears. So he says, we don't want to break down your operations. We want to come for a coffee in the canteen. And I told him right away, come on, guy, leave us alone. Leave us alone, go away, let us do our work here. But he insists. He keeps on saying, yeah. And after a while, I understand it. I understand that these people had been on strike for 24 hours in a cold October day, cold and rainy October day, and they were wet and cold. And because the whole company was on strike, all the canteens were closed except ours. So they came to ours, and he starts negotiating, and he continues the negotiation. And after a while, I believe he's honest. And so I took a risk. I asked him, can you give me your word? Can you give me your word that you will come and have a coffee and leave 15 minutes later? And you don't go into the production, you don't talk to our people, you just come for a coffee and you leave. And he says, yes, you have my word. And then I'm still standing on top of that house. You see there in the middle of the photo. Then I yelled to the whole group and I said, okay, your leader gives me his word that you will leave the plant after 15 minutes, come for a coffee. I want everybody to give their word. And if you give your word, please raise your hand now. And so they start raising their hands. And then I asked them, and after a while, everybody raises their hand. So I tell the gatekeeper, please open the gate now. And so the gate opens, and immediately I get a call from my boss who was inside the building. My boss, he calls me, says, Erik, are you crazy? And I tell him, look, don't worry. They come here for a coffee. So that was funny. But it worked well. So they came in, they left everybody alone, and after 15 minutes they left. So this incident created the basis for 1 year of win-win social negotiations in our company. And I was lucky to have had this experience very early on in my career. It anchored a few fundamental beliefs. One is, seek all possible ways and means to build trust with all the parties. Of course, when I was standing on top of that gatehouse, I already had the credibility. I was not some unknown person on top of that gatehouse, because the months before we had been very, very active with being on the floor, explaining people what was at stake in the company, how difficult it was, and highlighting plans to save the company. But all of that you'd have to do, as they say in Latin, in tempore non suspectu. The more you can build your trust before the negotiation, the farther it will get you, of course. So build that trust by showing that you care for the other party. We were on the floor. A second fundamental insight for me, be authentic. Stick your neck out, engage into the problem. As they say, only if you're part of the problem, you can be part of the solution. That conveys, passion conveys being part of the problem. So when I was standing on the gatehouse, I was talking about our company. These people knew me, and I was talking about our company. We're trying to save our company, trying to save jobs, of course, for everybody. And then the third one, take confidence building measures. I think that's a very interesting concept. What is a confidence building measure? I learned it actually from one of my bosses who was a politician. In politics, a confidence building measure is something that you do which is highly meaningful for the other party, yet you can take it easily. It doesn't cost you too much, but it has a very important signaling function. It shows the other party that you care. So in our case, of course, letting in those workers after one day of strike was a highly confidence building measure. It didn't influence by nothing the social negotiations taking on, because of course there were already negotiations. It didn't influence by nothing the main stake, but it was clearly a sign that we cared for the other party. So that's the first case. Let's then move to the second case now, which is the port of Antwerp. Look at my watch. No, we're doing fine. So my second story is about a multilateral negotiation among third companies for which I was the neutral facilitator. It happens in the port of Antwerp, a leading container port in the world and one of Belgium's main economic engines. Due to the explosive growth of the container-based transportation in the world, the container terminal, on the photo, on the main photo, you see one of the container terminals. They had gotten saturated. So giant ocean ships with 20,000 containers were fighting for the same quay space as the small inland barge operators. That's the second photo I show you now, who would bring containers from the inland to the terminal and then take back containers to the inland. So, and there was not enough capacity anymore for those small barges. This then led to unacceptable waiting times, up to 72 hours, and heavy financial losses in the barge sector. And even worse, because those terminals are multimodal hubs, a lot of the containers were being pushed to trucks, and then would end up on the roads, which was again then something the government didn't want too much. So the conflict had rotten and was now being fought in the media. The Port of Antwerp was a stakeholder, but didn't have the power because they gave concessions to terminals, and then they had to work through those terminals. So they were a party in this problem, but they wanted to remain a party. So they had appointed me as the neutral facilitator to lead the negotiation process. So my first meeting was with 30 CEOs in the boardroom of the port house. And each of them would vigorously defend their own company's interests. So there were the terminal operator bosses. For them, the terminals needed to be run in an efficient way. The quays needed to be planned up to perfection, no spare capacity, no flexibility to handle small ships. The barge operators, of course, they were praying for more flexibility on the terminals. Then there was the Barge Operator Association. The shipping lines, the ones bringing in the big ships, they came in with an overall objective that the whole port needed to be effective. The Port Authority wanted this to be solved, but wanted everybody to thrive, and the government wanted to promote the inland shipping as a preferred way of transporting containers inland. And then within each of those groups, the interests were not aligned either, right? The terminals, you had big and small terminals, barge operators, big and small ones, some operating ships on the Rhine River, other operating ships to France. Anyway, very complex, many different parties, and within each party, different sub-interests and non-aligned business interests. So what did we do? So after this first meeting, it took us 6 months of workshops and negotiations to produce a plan that was based on cooperative planning platforms and tools. And it really started by working with this small group of CEOs to create the main lines of the plans, and then we worked it out in detail with more subject matter expert groups. And magic happened. After a few months, the CEOs agreed to give a joint press conference together. So whereas they were fighting this in the media when we started, 6 months later, they brought a joint press conference. And there they announced not only that they had a plan, but also that they had created a community. And that community exists until today. So when new problems arise, there's now a platform where it's being discussed. And it's also a platform for new ideas. In this case, my learnings are of a different nature and I think complementary with the past one. An important one is it's not organizations that negotiate, but the people representing them. So these people, it's people that have to stick out their neck in a negotiation. But they also have their own stakeholders. They represent their company, the company of shareholders, there is top management, there is unions, and you want to get them into a position where they also are ready to take some personal risks. So they take personal risks if they negotiate outside their comfort zone. And so it's critical to understand their context. That can then create additional loyalty for them, a loyalty to the negotiating process. They have loyalty to their companies, but also to the negotiation process. In our case, a good example was the CEO of one of the terminals, DP World in Antwerp. He needed to explain basically to his headquarters in Dubai that he was going to work in Antwerp together with their main competitor, the Singapore Port Authority. So that is important to understand. It's the people that negotiate and the people take personal risks. But he convinced them. That was an important element in the negotiation. Second, perception is reality. Seek to understand before being understood. So this case is a bit, in a way, what we call a wicked problem. The situation is so complex that there is no optimal solution. The business interests are not aligned. Everybody has their own ecosystems, their own stakeholders. And so there is not a real right answer, and the problem even evolves while you work on it. The typical wicked problems are climate change, healthcare reform, the global problems. But at this stage, it's at a smaller scale. So a negotiation can only take place if there is a joint understanding of what the problem is. Here in this case, at the start, everybody came in with very strong opinions. You have to acknowledge that. Their perception is their reality. If you cannot start from there, you cannot get very far. So you have to start from there. As a trusted advisor, your role is critical. First, you must understand the realities of the parties and their perception. Ask questions, give some information, go and visit them, create a trusted space. Only then you can start progress. Maybe a quote by a famous statesman, Abraham Lincoln. One day he was talking about the Southerners in the Civil War, right? His opposites. He said, don't criticize them. They are just what we would be under similar circumstances. Perception is reality. Third insight, try not to bargain, but negotiate to co-create value. I think that's, of course, what the NCMC is all about. You don't want to, sometimes I say I never negotiate. I try to help people to create a shared vision, which has value for all of them. And then it happens by itself. Then you don't have to negotiate. So in our case, we focused not on what was not going right in those heavy conflictual beginning, but we focused right away on what would be the ideal world 3 years from now. We had then, once people liked that vision, then things happened by themselves. I like quotes, right? So I'll give you another one by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, famous French author. If you want to build a ship, don't bring your men together to give them orders, to explain them every detail, to tell them where to find every detail. If you want to build a ship, awaken in the heart of your men and women the desire for the sea. I think that says it all. Fourth one, engage, take small steps together, manage expectations. In those very complex multilateral negotiations, often the conflict sits very deep, and you cannot right away get out of that. There it's important to take small steps. Small steps lead to bigger steps typically. So when we started, there was distrust around the table. Nobody in the group would take personal risks and launch a breakthrough idea. But people can grow into something. What are small steps? In our case, having them join for that first meeting was already a first step. The fact that they participate already meant something. We prepared that meeting by individual interviews. That's another small step. Afterwards, we got so far as to make a joint problem statement. We don't have the solution yet, but just agreeing on the problem is already a step which will create, again, loyalty to the process itself. At the same time, manage expectations. The expectation can be just to make that first. It's very important that step after step you progress, so that you set the expectations in such a way that people will manage that and reach that before taking the next step. Small steps create loyalty to the process. The big steps are for later. And then the last one, linked to the previous, really, optimism, trust the process. Manage your anxiety and don't blame anyone. So in my introduction, I showed that through my career, the cases have gotten more and more complex and more diverse. But you also learn that you can trust the process. When you start it, you don't know what the solution will be. Okay, you have some vague idea, of course, but then take people into it, make these small steps, and also be humble. It's in the end, they need to agree on the final solution, not you. You are the facilitator, but trust it. And that anxiety, but of course, it takes practice. It takes practice to know that in the end, something will emerge. If people show up, it means they want to solve the problem as well. And so, and again, maybe two quotes, one by Winston Churchill. I'm an optimist. I don't see much use of anything else. I think if you're a negotiator, it's part of your job description to be an optimist. And Thomas Edison said, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. I think this should be part of the toolbox of every negotiator. Always try one more time. Let me then move to the third case, which is board companions. It's a social profit organization which I founded in 2019. And I think today we must have something like 200 INSEAD alumni are members of our association. What do? We place experienced executives as volunteer board members in non-profit organizations. Non-profit organizations of all sorts, right? Ranging from national museums, shelter houses for beaten women, integration of refugees in the labor market, educational platforms. So these experienced executives are typically CEOs or partners of law firms, of consulting firms, bankers, highly experienced people that take that step. So everywhere in the world, the social profit sector has an essential place because of its sheer importance, economic importance, typically 10% of paid employment. And that's then not counting all the volunteers and not counting the high impact it has for our societies. Yet the sector, the social profit sector, is under pressure everywhere. The needs increase, the needs for solidarity increase, but the funds are drying up. I was myself a board member in the Paralympics movement, and there I took full account of the power of giving back. Just bringing you as experienced executives, just sharing that management and board expertise in a non-profit or social profit context has high value. And so that was 7 years ago. And that was when we decided this beautiful journey. So with a few other INSEAD alumni, we created board companions to bring more experienced directors in the non-profit sector. And right from the start, we had the luck of having Belgium's leading foundation, the King Baudouin Foundation, the leading philanthropic institution, who liked the idea, who said, yes, this is right on target. We want to create bridges between the nonprofit sector and the business world. We want to create those bridges, and we need exactly what you are bringing. So we developed an innovative way to bridge the gap by starting speed dates. The photos on top are really from the speed dates. We bring together mostly INSEAD alumni who we recruit through a whole process, mostly INSEAD alumni with interested nonprofit organizations who want to reinforce their board and then focus on governance and on better strategies and all that. Typically, everybody gets 3 interviews, and then come out 70% matches of these evenings. And like that, we built really a negotiating platform at scale. These are speed date evenings are 3 times 20 negotiations where value is created during the speed date. So this gap between the nonprofit sector and the business world is, of course, huge. There are millions of organizations worldwide and millions of people who could take a role. And so what we created is a platform, a catalytic platform that solves this, well, as I said in the beginning, a grassroots platform. We solve it bottom up, or at least we try to contribute it bottom up. Not only do we recruit and place board members, we then also train the people. We have boot camps, we create intervisions, we bring people together, we create best practice and all that. So ultimately, we raise the value of being a board member in a nonprofit. So this was created in Belgium. We have 150 members in Belgium, and then already with an important second startup in the Netherlands with 100 companions, and now Germany, France, and Italy already 30. So this is really for INSEAD alumni. This is for you. But so what are the lessons here? You can appeal to people to step in and be part of the solution. I said in the beginning, you must engage yourself in the process. In the Port of Antwerp, I explained how you want to get the others engaged in the process, but here it's even more than that. You can appeal to people, ask upon them, say them how important it is to take up this role in the nonprofit sector, and people will react positively. People like to be bridge builders, but you have to ask them. And then maybe a last recommendation or a last insight, more than anything else, learn to love this. Learn from every negotiation. I think negotiation is, you have to take it with humbleness. You get better at it the more you do it. And so learn to love it. You can also conceptualize some negotiations don't go the way you want, but you can learn from them. Learn to love it and get better next time. So this is a bit we covered now the 10 reflections, the 10 insights, my personal insights. Again, it's personal insights, but I'm happy to share them with you. So here they are, all 10. And maybe now I would like to also get your view on this. So you can take your smartphones, and I would like to ask you, and we're going to do a little Menti session in a minute. I would like to ask you, which one resonates most for you? So that would be a nice feedback. And then maybe we can even use that in the NCMC to do something with it. So here is the slide. You have the QR code on the right. And then you can select one of those 10, which would be your preferred. I hope it works. So wait another 10 seconds. It's still going on. As long as the counter goes up, I keep it going, right?
To a point, if you see it slow down
Yeah,
significantly, then maybe.
yeah. But I think we have two clear winners.
We're getting to have the crowd, but I see, because there was a lot to read, and so I think people are just going through a little bit.
But maybe it's a statistically relevant sample we have now on the screen already.
It's becoming reasonable data, yeah.
So
Thank you.
I think there is a few less important or that resonate less. But the two key I see is and I'm happy that those two come up actually. It's not organizations that negotiate, but the people representing them. And then, of course, coupled to that right away, perception is reality. Those people have their reality. And if you cannot understand their reality, it's difficult to have them negotiate and take small steps. So these are also, funnily enough, the two I would have selected myself in my moderate negotiator experience. Thank you. I think that brings me, Horacio, to the end of my part of this webinar, and happy to answer to any of the questions that you will bring to me then. And thank you to the audience for your active participation in our webinar.
Thank you so much. So if you want to
I'll
bring
stop
down
sharing
the slides
now,
so that people can see you more clearly, I think that would be nice. Look at the love that people are showing you over here with all the little icons coming up. So this is fantastic. Thank you all very much. He well deserves it, and the stories are pretty amazing. So there were people saying, I wanted to choose more than one. They liked so much. So this is nice. And then we also have here, if you could elaborate a bit more.
I share now.
I think there's more of a definite, oh, there you go, right? Nice. It's nice to have it reciprocated. So it's not the most upvoted question. If I can have people remember to write their questions or upvote on that, but I'll get a small definitional one first. Just can you remind people a little bit what confidence building measures are? Can you give a couple of examples or something of sorts?
Yeah, it's a signal which you give to the other party, which is not a real big concession in your negotiation, but it signals to the other party that you care for them, that they are important for you, and it's something important for them. So the example I gave was, of course, opening the gate. You have to know that in parallel with the story I tell you, there were lengthy negotiations about, we fired, the Sabina company had fired 1,000 people. There were negotiations about the conditions. There were negotiations about even salary reductions, all of that, very lengthy. The incident that I explained has nothing to do with that. It was just showing you are important for us. Confidence building can also be you share a piece of information which the other party may think is relevant. It may be in asking them whatever small things you do to show them they're important for you.
Well, thank you very much. So let me get here the most upvoted ones. So in the second case, how was the core team of CEOs selected? And there are a couple of follow-ups. What were you looking for in them, and was there a balance you were aiming for?
Yes. So we clearly needed those 5 categories, all the different stakeholders, and we tried to always invite the sector association. So the sector association of the terminals and shippers was there, the sector association of the inland shipping companies, and then we also invited the main actors. So because the main actors obviously would drive it, right? For example, in the inland shipping, there are small shipping companies with a few ships and big ones with tens. So the small ones, let's say, were represented by the association, whereas the big ones were represented themselves. I think that was an important element. What I didn't tell you is that before we did this, we started this project, they signed all of them a letter of intent. So that was before I joined. The board had already created that dynamic that we cannot continue like this. So they had signed a letter of intent, and then the first step was this meeting that I explained in the case.
So, and so what were you looking for in the people? Was that intent, right? And then was there a balance, you mean, between the small and the bigger operators?
Yes, there was a balance, and critical to take that into account. You cannot only make a deal for the big ones, and the big ones realize that. The big operators, the big inland shipping lines, really, I think they realized they could do it all by themselves, but they wanted the small ones to be involved. They wanted to create a sector negotiation. One of the things that came out of this was, for example, the need to uh, use bigger ships with more containers and come with more containers in one go to the port of Antwerp. The bigger operators could have done that all by themselves, but it was much more powerful if the small ones also joined in. We even created a mechanism with the European Commission to subsidize some industry conversion, some consolidation in the industry. So, but all of that is in more detail, of course.
And was there, so this is my insert on that question. Was there anyone that the group deliberately, because that's something that normally happens in discussions of multi-party negotiation theory, that someone was deliberately not invited because they would be seen either as spoilers, sabotagers, or just make things significantly harder?
No,
No.
we took right away from the beginning the option we would not do that. Maybe another important thing from the beginning, now I relate back to the previous question about the confidence building measures or the creating trust. So they were fighting this out in the press. So they were not negotiating anymore with each other, but every time a ship would be 72 hours late, there would be an article in the press, and everybody was saying, "What's the port doing? What's the port doing?" And the ports couldn't do anything, so they started this process. But one of the things we did right at the beginning is establish the rules. So I said, okay, one of the rules, and I proposed that rule, is the negotiations take place here in this room, nowhere else, and certainly not in the press. So I said, whatever is said outside this room doesn't count. If you have side meetings, fine, but it's going to here things need to be discussed. And we agree not to talk to the press except together. And then the first time we talked to the press was 6 months later with this press conference, all of them together. So that was an important confidence building measure.
Yeah. But plus a little bit of a process control there, because that's one of the biggest challenges with multi-party. It's managing chaos of everyone going everywhere. Well, thank you. Let me move more to questions from the group then. So on the second case, I'm curious, how did you manage some of the stakeholders who might have perceived the small steps or wins, like the joint problem statement, as insufficient or too slow, so to make sure that they kept themselves to make sure that they were still engaged in the process?
Yes, it was a mixture of both, right? So there was these initial small steps, but in workshop 2, we established the vision. The vision without too much focusing on the constraints of the moment, but where do we want to be in 3 years' time? And so I think in a process like that, you have to manage both. There must be an overarching vision and then small steps to get there. And I always said, we'll see if we get to that vision. We're going to work together now and see how far we can get. It's maybe an ideal that we won't reach, but let's see how far we can get towards that ideal.
So always contextualize so that the small stuff made sense on the overall picture. Okay, thank you. So moving on to the next one, and I think it's more of a trying to validate or get your reaction on what that person is saying. So it sounds like the more certain we are about where we want to land, the less space we leave to understand what really matters and why to the counterparty. And even if you say you are trying to collaborate, you're really defending your assumptions, the assumptions you landed on before the negotiation began. Is that how you see it? How do you see
it? We all agreed pretty much on this ideal state rapidly. I think after 6 weeks or so, we had agreed on the ideal state and also agreed on where we stood versus that ideal state. And then that's when the small steps started to move into that direction. I'm not sure if that's an answer to the question.
Yeah, no, I think that's a different. So this is a new question from a new person. I think they were just establishing from a theoretical perspective, not just necessarily on the case 2, case 1, or whatever case.
Yeah.
Let me try to rephrase a bit, because maybe, at least from my understanding, which was, if you are going into a negotiation, right, the more certain you are, the more clear is your vision about what you want out of this negotiation, the less space you leave for input to the other person. And
yeah, but
therefore, even when you say you want to collaborate, because you have such a clear vision that was done pre-negotiation, there's really no room for the other one to participate. So you're just pushing your own ideas on them anyhow. You're just defending your own side as opposed to truly collaborating. I think that connects back to what you said, don't bargain, co-create.
Yeah, exactly. So this vision was not mine. It was their vision. It was the vision of everybody in the room. I think that's the important part of it. So they didn't need to negotiate about that vision anymore. It was their vision. And then, of course, it was more practical how to get there.
Yeah, but because I have some conversations with colleagues about what the word vision means, because it's really an exciting conversation when it comes to leadership. Everyone talks vision. You should talk about vision. And here you say they already had a vision, but they didn't have an outcome. So the vision was not that clear or that crystal clear. They had an idea of direction of travel, but they didn't know exactly where they were going to land.
When we entered the meeting, we had only a general vision of travel. Yes. After these 3 or 4 first workshops with the CEOs, we had an operating model in mind, a high-level operating model. But that was theirs. It really emerged. It was talked through, all of them. And the essential part of the negotiation took place there, those first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Everything else was then making it practically feasible.
Yeah. So, but what I'm trying then connecting here, and I think that's the person maybe thinking, is that if one of these parties, maybe a powerful one, were to come with that very clear vision of themselves, then they would not be engaging in a true collaboration. They would be just pushing what they prefer.
Yes, for sure. But in those first sessions, we took a lot of time to increase mutual empathy. So we invited everybody to explain their context and their position. And so that was also very important in the emerging negotiation, let's say. Yeah.
Fantastic.
People thanked us for that, actually.
Yeah, no, this is very coherent with the theory where most people in a conflict or multi-party usually have not heard everyone else or the counterparty. So just doing that listening exercise.
And that was one of the rules. We established one of the rules. We're going to listen to everybody. It may take time, but we're going to do that. And so they came with that mindset.
Wonderful. I'll be fascinated to see those rules.
Yeah.
At some point, if you have that list of rules and share with people, I think people will love to see those, because it seems like there were some very good ones established very early on, and they helped to create a process that was very conducive. So let me go to the next one. As a seasoned negotiator and mediator, how do you foresee the current geopolitical affairs being negotiated? Do you want to take that one? No.
I'm not a negotiator at that level.
Okay.
If they invite me...
Go ahead, please.
No, if they'd invite me, I would certainly join the team. All I wanted to share today is don't forget the grassroots. It's not because there are big geopolitical tensions and wars being fought out that we should not, all of us, every day, try to show that things can be done differently. Yeah. If all of us do that, we'll change geopolitics.
That's a little bit of what we're doing right now, right?
Exactly.
So thank you so much. So, and it was funny because as you're saying that, I just realized the sun is shining on your face. It looked quite beautiful. In your Sabina case study, next question, was your role that of a negotiator or a mediator, right? Because there are differences between the two roles.
Yeah, clearly different. In the Sabina case, I had skin in the game. This was my plant operating. We had kept it open for 24 hours already. We wanted to create our own future, our own social relations, so that I was skin in the game. Whereas in the Port of Antwerp case, I was a mediator, but in a way I created, I stepped into it. I was not outside negotiator. I stepped into it. I had lots of side meetings. We had side meetings with people. And so I became, but I was a mediator. And in the board companions case, it's even facilitator.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yes. So there's a couple there. I'm trying to summarize a few of the questions because we only have time for one, maybe two more. before we do a little bit of a closing, because we want to leave a couple of minutes for the soft launch of the Negotiator Award, INSEAD NCMC version 2026. And so what advice or recommendation you will give to in a case where one is negotiating on behalf of a party that does not necessarily believe in the co-creation of value or in the principles of authenticity and building trust? And there are a couple others that said when you're negotiating with someone difficult or someone who's doing win-lose, right? So that kind of, you probably faced at least some of those people in those experiences. So what were some of the things you did more or different or less?
I think there's a part of coaching then also, right? You have to negotiate first with your client and to get them to, I don't know, maybe explain them how important their attitude will be in the ultimate outcome. And so maybe even if it's not natural, they can try to behave in a certain way, right? So I think that's an important part of the. That's what I also said in the perception is reality. Everybody has their own context. So yes, for you, of course, sometimes you just refuse to negotiate, right? If there is bad faith, I would not take. You have your own credibility as well, right? If there is bad faith, I would not negotiate. But if there is good faith, then I think you can explain to your client what his role is going to be to reach a good outcome. But that's also important that you realize that the other parties around the table have the same constraint. The people that are in your room, they may want to come to certain conclusions, but they need to negotiate. Everybody needs to negotiate with their own stakeholders, right? So that's really key. So be aware of that, and he could even help others, right? Sometimes people say, yeah, but this I cannot sell at home in my company, but maybe help them with that. As a facilitator, you facilitate the process, I think, not only one client.
True, very true. One more question here. So how can we address situation where previously established trust appears to have been compromised by the other party? And what impact does that have on the ongoing negotiation process? And I think there's another question that says, what would you have done if the union had not stuck to the 15-minute commitment and done the things you asked them not to do, for example, right? Just I'm merging two questions because I think like they deal with that trust and you took that trust risk. And what if they had not complied? So how do you handle that? How do you address that? Did you have a backup plan on that case, by the way?
No.
No, I thought so.
For the scene at the gate, there was no backup plan. But yeah, I think intuition, right? Intuition and seeing and talking. I knew some of the people, of course. It's not an anonymous group. These were half of them were not half, but some of them were my own employees. Some of them were on strike. Had it turned sour, I cannot tell you what would have happened, but I would for sure have gone to the plant and to discuss with people and put in my own. Yeah, I'm part of the problem. Huh? You're part of the problem, and then you can be part of the solution. But then, unfortunately, I cannot share the backup plan. Luckily, I have not had situations like that. No. Yeah. What I've had is situations where I didn't have all the cards in hands. And so in an acquisition, for example, we negotiated in good faith a certain price, and then my own boss would then, in the end, not agree to the price. Those are tricky situations.
Yes, indeed they are. Yeah. And then you can go back to what you mentioned before. You have that internal negotiation you mentioned.
Yes.
Agreed. Erik, unfortunately, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for your very generous sharing. There were some people who just said, wow, what amazing stories. So let me walk us through a couple of things and take advantage of the fact that you're here to say a couple of things as well about the Negotiator of the Year award. So let me up some slides here just as a closing. And then there's one with your picture in it. If you don't mind, I'm going to invite you to say a couple of words there as well. So just saying thank you for our two speakers already. We have more coming. So if you want to watch past webinars, feel free to take a copy here and it will take you directly to the NCMC site where the webinars are posted. The next couple ones are coming the next couple of months. One we're having is Laura Cray on the newest research on gender negotiations, and Brian Gunia talking about how barter can actually help us negotiate better as well. We actually having Bruce Patton already semi-confirmed. He's still looking for dates. He's a co-author of Getting to Yes and the first author of Difficult Conversations, or second author there in this version. So he's a great speaker. He was my teacher and mentor as well. So I'm really excited to have him join us. So here is Erik a few months ago in Abu Dhabi. So if you want to learn more about the INSEAD Negotiator Award, please feel free to click on it. Feel free to send candidates or even self-candidacy. That's fine. It's for now limited to the INSEAD community. So you have to be connected to INSEAD in one way or another, but you can start all your nomination. Within next month, we're going to be doing more of the hard launch of the process, and the results will be announced sometimes in the second semester. The reason why we have this is to have things like we just had today here, is to create webinars and cases of real life negotiations of real people in our community, showing that win-win is not only possible in our day-to-day negotiations and our business negotiations, but is also sustainable, and in many times, maybe even a superior way to go about it. I'm not gonna dare to say every time, because I don't believe on that myself, but more often than not, the theory and the practice shows to us that when well done, win-win can be a superior path. So with that, I just wanted to invite Erik very quickly back in right after. And Erik, you said that you wanted to say a couple more words about what that meant to you.
Yeah, it has been really great. So the award process in itself, and then winning the award and everything that's happened since then has really been great. To me, it has meant strengthening the convictions, let's say. So these things that I shared with you today look like natural to me. But then it's great that there is this group, NCMC, and then the award brought that message to me. Well, this is really great. You're not alone. This is the way to do it, right? So that's a first thing, strengthening convictions. Second thing I like a lot is we work together now on these cases. So it has been a great group of people that I met, Horacio, when we met in Abu Dhabi, and since then. And so working together on cases and sharing them like you do for really sharing the standards of negotiation and the good practices is fantastic. And thirdly, for me personally, it's also been a good challenge, like the session I brought today, to conceptualize some of these personal insights. You know, we think we apply them every time, but that's not true. It's good to put them all 10 on a line and to, in the next negotiation, check myself if I'm applying all of them. So it's been a great pleasure as well to reflect on myself. No, thank you. I would recommend, and the process, of course, with the interviews and I have to explain, the whole thing is fantastic. I can only recommend people to sign up for the 2026 award.
Thank you so much. Let me actually then just share a small piece of news as well that I recently announced on LinkedIn. I got a Best Paper Award on my article on AI and negotiation. There'll be a couple more LinkedIn posts coming out of that. But if you would like to see the webinar or get a copy of the paper, and there's a reduced version, a 2-page version of our knowledge website as well. So here you have the time to pick the QR of the one you prefer. If not, you can just go to the website, the NCMCI website, and it'll be there as well. And finally, just stay connected. Once again, I'll just invite everyone who's still around to show the love to Erik in appreciation for not only his award, but for the great sharing that he did today. Erik, thank you so very much. Wishing you all the luck, and I'll see you soon. And let's keep on working on spreading how to actually do win-win well in the practice as well.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.
Same here. Thank you, everyone. Thanks once again for showing up. I hope this was helpful. And very, very soon then we'll be announcing the next one. Thank you all.